The sun hung low over the Nevada desert like a burning coin, turning the sky into a sheet of silver-blue heat. The kind of heat that shimmered off the asphalt and made even steel buildings look like they were melting at the edges. As the bus rolled through the final checkpoint of Fort Titan, one of the most demanding joint training bases in the United States, every trainee inside straightened their posture. Every trainee, except one, Private Elena Cruz, sat by the window, her jaw tight, her expression unreadable. She wasn't looking at the base like it was her dream come true, or a challenge she had been waiting her whole life to conquer. She looked at it like it was an opponent, one she already knew she'd have to fight. Dust swirled around the wheels as the bus groaned to a halt. The doors snapped open, and the hot desert air immediately filled the cabin, thick with sand and the faint scent of oil. One by one, soldiers filed out, all eager to prove themselves. Most were meant, all muscular, loud. Some carried the swagger of having served before. Others tried to imitate it. Elena stepped off last. The moment her boots hit the ground, the base came alive around her. She saw soldiers sprinting across the obstacle course, instructors shouting commands that sliced through the air, the clang of metal weights hitting the ground, and the rhythmic gunfire from the distant range. Fort Titan wasn't a base, it was a furnace, and everyone inside was expected to come out sharper, stronger, faster. A few soldiers noticed her immediately. "Who's the new girl?" one whispered to another. "She's tiny," the other said with a smirk. "Bet she won't last a week." Elena ignored them. She didn't come here to be liked. She came here because this was the only place where she could prove something, not to the world, not to any commanding officer, but to herself. Her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, she began walking across the open grounds. The sun beat down mercilessly, making her feel like she was walking inside a furnace. Sweat trickled down her neck, but her steps remained steady and controlled. She had been through worse heat, worse conditions, worse people. What she hadn't expected was how quickly people judged her. At the pull-up bar station, 2 trainees paused mid-exercise just to watch her pass. Another group at the sandpit stopped pushing their weighted sleds to get a better look. And up near the matted fighting area, a tall officer with squared shoulders and a chest full of ribbons narrowed his eyes at her. His uniform was pristine even out here, too pristine for someone who trained with the troops. He didn't wave, he didn't smile, he just observed her like a hawk sizing up prey. Elena met his gaze for a moment. No fear, no hesitation, just a calm, steady stare. He didn't seem to like that. Cruz. She turned to see Staff Sergeant Harper, a man built like he'd been carved out of the same stone as Mount Rushmore, striding toward her with a clipboard tucked under his arm. "You're late. I arrived at the exact time listed in my orders, Staff Sergeant," she replied. He snorted. "Then your orders are late. Not the kind of place that welcomed logic." She nodded anyway. "Understood." He motioned around them. "This is Fort Titan. You earn your place here. You don't walk in and expect it." "I'm aware, Staff Sergeant." Harper studied her for a long moment. "You don't look aware." Elena didn't react. She knew better. The first rule of every military environment, your expression could make you a target, and her quiet confidence was already drawing attention. They started walking across the field as Harper briefed her. "You'll be joining Bravo Company. You'll sleep where they sleep, train where they train, bleed where they bleed. They've been here 2 weeks already, so you're behind. I'll catch up. That's what everyone says." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "But no one here is going to go easy on you, not because you're new, not because you're small, and definitely not because you're a woman. If anything," he smirked, "that's exactly why they'll go harder." Elena's eyes didn't waver. That won't be a problem. Harper almost smiled, almost. Let's hope you're right, because this place, it has a way of breaking people. She shifted her duffel bag higher on her shoulder. I don't break, not anymore. As they continued toward the company barracks, she felt dozens of eyes on her, some curious, some hostile, and some already calculating her failure. But Elena walked with the same steady force she always did. She wasn't here to fit in. She was here to survive Fort Titan, and to win. The morning sun at Fort Titan didn't rise gently. It attacked. By the time the clock struck 0, 9s, 0s, 0, the heat was already brutal, baking the sand into a fine powder that clung to skin, boots, and egos. Bravo Company stood in formation on the training grounds, sweat glistening on their foreheads as they waited for the next instruction. Elena Cruz joined them at the far end, her uniform still crisp compared to the dust-worn clothing of the others. She could feel the weight of their eyes as she took her place, but she kept her posture straight and expression unreadable. She didn't need to look around to know they were whispering about her. Great, they added another one. Another, she's half our size. Looks like a yoga instructor. Bet she can't even do 5 pull-ups. The last comment came from a tall, muscular trainee named Reed, whose reputation had already reached her ears before she stepped off the bus. Reed was the unofficial alpha of Bravo Company, the kind of soldier who ran faster when someone was watching, lifted heavier when someone else struggled, and pushed harder when there was an opportunity to show dominance. He wasn't whispering, he wanted her to hear. Elena kept her eyes forward. Staff Sergeant Harper blew his whistle and barked, "Bravo, 3-minute warm-up, full sprint, move." The formation exploded into motion. Boots pounded the dirt, dust shot up behind every trainee. Elena ran silently, controlling her breathing, her steps light despite the heavy terrain. The others weren't so graceful, grunting, panting, kicking sand everywhere. Reed took the opportunity to move closer to her. He slowed his pace so he could run beside her, wearing a mocking grin. "You the new girl," he said, pretending to struggle for air even though he wasn't. She didn't answer. "You deaf?" Another trainee laughed from behind them. "No," Elena said calmly without breaking stride, "just not interested." The laughter around them died instantly. Reed's smile vanished. "What was that?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "You heard me." Reed sped up, cutting her off. She stepped left. He moved left. She stepped right. He blocked her again. It wasn't a coincidence. He wanted to make a point. "Listen, Princess," Reed said, voice low but edged with hostility. "This is Bravo Company. We don't babysit. I didn't ask for a babysitter. You'll need one." Elena didn't look at him. "Only if I run as slow as you." Reed's jaw tensed. A few trainees trailed closer, sensing trouble. Soldiers loved drama almost as much as they loved competition. When the sprint ended, Harper barked orders for the next drill, combat conditioning circuits. The kind built to test lungs, muscle, and willpower. Reed stepped close enough for Elena to feel the threat in his tone. "You think you're tough because you talk back. You're in our house now." Elena looked up at him, not intimidated, not impressed. "I know where I am." Harper clapped his hands loudly. Pairs 1-on-1 transitions, grappling, takedowns, and controlled strikes move. Pairs formed quickly. Elena started toward an open mat when Reed stepped in front of her. "She's with me," he told Harper. The staff sergeant raised an eyebrow, studying Elena. "You good with that, Cruz?" "Yes, Staff Sergeant." Her voice was steady. Reed grinned. He thought he had already won. They stepped onto the mat, surrounded by Bravo Company like a crowd gathering to watch a street fight. No one hid their curiosity anymore. Everyone wanted to see how fast the new girl would fall. Harper blew the whistle. Elena barely had time to raise her guard before Reed lunged, grabbing her wrist. His grip was tight, too tight for a controlled drill. He twisted her arm downward, trying to force her onto her knees. She rolled her shoulder, redirected the pressure, and slipped free. Reed blinked in surprise. It had taken her less than a second. That was luck, he snapped. It was physics, she corrected. The trainees murmured, their attention sharpened. Reed charged again, this time faster, fueled by ego. He grabbed for her uniform, trying to overpower her with brute strength. Elena pivoted, stepping sideways, letting his weight carry him forward. When he stumbled, she swept his ankle lightly. Not hard enough to hurt him, just enough to embarrass him. He hit the sand, the entire circle gasped. Reed scrambled up, red-faced. "You little," Harper barked. "Control your temper, Reed." But Reed wasn't listening. He lunged again, grabbing her collar and pulling her toward him. Sand flew, grunts echoed, their feet dug into the ground as they struggled. "You're done," Reed growled. Elena didn't panic. Her mind went quiet, the way it always did when things got dangerous. She used the momentum of his pull, stepped in, and slipped her arm beneath his elbow. It was small, subtle, and incredibly efficient. Reed froze, not because she hurt him, but because he realized she could. One wrong move from him and she could snap his elbow. She let go first. Reed stumbled back, breathing hard, shocked at how close he had come to humiliation. The trainees stared, some impressed, some confused, some angry she hadn't taken the fall they expected. Reed spat sand from his mouth and pointed at her. "This isn't over." Elena didn't flinch. "It hasn't even started." The circle around them was silent. Fort Titan had expected a rookie. They got a storm. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the training grounds, sharp and black against the pale sand. By now, Elena Cruz had already completed 2 grueling circuits, a sprint drill and a combatives rotation. Sweat soaked through her uniform and dust clung to her skin like a second layer. But Bravo Company wasn't looking at her sweat. They were still replaying the moment she brought Reed, Bravo's unofficial powerhouse, down to the sand. Not with strength, not with force, but with precision. That was what unsettled them most. As the trainees gathered around the hydration station, whispers began spreading again, but this time they carried a different tone. "Did you see how fast she moved? No one gets out of Reed's grip. She had him locked without even trying. Harper definitely saw it. No way this goes unnoticed. Harper saw everything, and apparently so did someone else." A hush fell over the group as a shadow stretched across the ground. One by one, heads turned, conversations died mid-sentence. Even the wind seemed to pause. A commanding officer approached with slow, controlled steps, his polished boots pristine despite the dusty terrain. His uniform was crisp, the medals on his chest gleaming like tiny suns. His posture had the exact stiffness that only came from decades of discipline. His eyes were sharp, scanning, calculating. Colonel Briggs, one of the highest-ranking officers on the base. He didn't walk. He arrived, like a storm rolling across a clear sky. Harper immediately straightened and saluted. "Sir," Briggs returned the salute with minimal movement, his gaze already fixed on Elena. And Elena felt his stare like a weight pressing against her chest. "Which one is Cruz?" Briggs asked, though he clearly already knew. Harper turned toward her, Cruz front and center. Elena stepped forward calmly, though every instinct in her body told her this wasn't a routine introduction. Briggs studied her without speaking, his eyes taking in every detail. Her posture, her stance, the controlled rise and fall of her breathing. His silence stretched on long enough to make the rest of Bravo Company uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke. "You're the one who handled Reed." It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." A muscle in Reed's jaw twitched, embarrassment burning behind his eyes, but he said nothing. Briggs circled her slowly, hands behind his back. "Where did you train before this?" "Joint training facilities in California, sir." "What unit?" Classified assignment, sir. Her tone was respectful but firm. She wasn't lying, but she also wasn't offering details. Briggs stopped walking and faced her directly. That's convenient. Elena didn't respond. You know, Briggs continued, Bravo Company has a rhythm, a hierarchy, a system, and they don't take kindly to disruption. Elena felt the weight behind his words. The implication was clear. Her presence had stirred something in the unit, something he wanted to understand, control, or eliminate. I'm not here to disrupt, sir, she said. I'm here to train. Briggs stepped closer, so close she could see the fine lines around his eyes. But you're already disrupting, Cruz, whether you intend to or not. The trainees stood frozen, afraid to even shift their weight. The only sound was the low hum of the base generators. You embarrassed one of my best, Briggs said, glancing at Reed before returning his gaze to her. With a maneuver I've only seen used by seasoned combatives instructors. Elena kept her posture stiff. It was just a drill, sir. He leaned in ever so slightly. No drill ends with Reed on the ground. Reed straightened, folding his arms, wanting the moment to pass, but also wanting vengeance. Briggs took a breath, as if deciding something. Tell me something, Cruz. His voice was quieter now, but sharper. Where did you really learn that technique? Harper shifted uncomfortably. The trainees found the ground suddenly fascinating. Elena held her stare. With respect, sir, she said, if my record didn't provide that information, it was meant to be omitted. Briggs's lips tightened, not exactly a smile, not quite disapproval. You're bold. He tilted his head. Bold enough to think you can speak to a colonel like that and walk away. Elena held her stance, bold enough to follow the regulations that determine what I am permitted to disclose. For the first time, Briggs's expression cracked, not anger, but curiosity. Intense, burning curiosity, interesting. Harper stood straighter, sensing a shift in the air. Briggs stepped back and crossed his arms behind him. Cruz, this base breaks soldiers. It pushes them past limits they didn't know existed, and everyone here, from the strongest men to the most seasoned veterans, learns one thing: there is always someone better. Understood, sir. I hope you do. His voice dropped. Because what you did to Reed, impressive as it was, put a target on your back. Elena already knew that. She felt the target the moment Reed hit the sand. Briggs scanned the rest of Bravo Company. Training resumes, he said shortly. I expect discipline, and I expect respect. His gaze flickered back to Elena one last time before he walked away, leaving an electric heaviness in the air. As the trainees dispersed for the next drill, Reed stepped close enough for only her to hear. You think Briggs came for you. He came for me, and now I have something to prove. Elena didn't respond, but she knew one thing for certain. The confrontation with Reed had been personal. The confrontation with Briggs, that was something else entirely, and it was only the beginning.